and we're really excited to jump in to our next conversation on social justice. And so this next panel will feature Nolan Smith of Duke men's basketball and Sydney Colson of the WNBA. I wish we had Josh Hairston here. He did a phenomenal job introducing Nolan earlier, the mayor of Durham. So I look forward, Dean Smith is gonna be able to follow up Josh on that. But I'd like to introduce this panel. From Muhammad Ali to Colin Kaepernick, athletes have continually advocated for social justice. 2020 was an unprecedented year, marked by a shift in how athletes and organizations promote change through their unique platforms. Sports is an arena where key stakeholders can inspire change to dismantle systemic racism and other forms of social injustice. I am thrilled to introduce our moderator, Martin Smith, who is an assistant professor of the practice of education and dean of academic affairs for Trinity College of Arts and Sciences at Duke University. Dean Smith, thank you so much for leading this important conversation. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin, for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here with Nolan Smith and Sydney Colson to talk about a very important issue. As I begin this conversation, we only have 30 minutes, so I want to jump into our two outstanding panelists and really hear their story and learn about their background and what prompted them to get into this work. Because oftentimes athletes take a step back. There have been historically many athletes who stepped into the light and stood up for social justice related issues, but many times we know that those athletes faced a lot of backlash. So what I want to start with is the story of these two phenomenal athletes and why they stepped forward. And so as they're thinking about that, I just want to say a few things to kind of set the tone for who they both are. As I'm looking at their bios, first off, we have two collegiate point guards, major universities, and they both win an NCAA title. One plays in the NBA, one plays in the WNBA. Not only are they leaders on the court, but they're leaders in the community. And so for them to reach these levels and to still be advocating, I think it's important that we start with their stories and possibly their childhood or wherever they want to start off with to learn about why did they jump into this work. So let's start with Sydney, and then we'll go to Nolan.
I thought you were maybe going to make Nolan go first because he's the Dookie, but really glad to be here. Thank you for taking the time to do this and for inviting me. But yeah, for me, this was not something that I'd always been doing. Sadly, I've admitted to people before, just being a Black person in America, a Black woman, obviously a lot that takes place, a lot of the injustice that takes place in America is geared toward us. And this WNBA season was really the first time where I dipped my toe in this activism work. And it was really empowering, really eye-opening. It's really unfortunate that the circumstances that brought it about were George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor's murder. But I hope some good came from it. We were able to have a season in the WNBA in the bubble that we dedicated to Breonna Taylor and Say Her Name, which is a hashtag that was started because Black women weren't receiving the same sort of awareness and attention when they were killed from state violence, killed by police. So we dedicated a lot of our season. We made sure that we were highlighting different grassroots organizations who had been doing the work before we started, and tried to get them funding because it costs money to do this work. It takes a lot of time, and I learned that it was really, really taxing emotionally, but I think that a lot of good came out of it. And so I'm just really happy that I was able to make the connections to some important people in the field of activism and to keep those relationships growing. So that was wordy, but that was.
No, it's great. Thank you. Nolan?
Yeah. So I'll start by just saying, I guess I became an activist at a very early age. And, to me, an activist is standing up for what you believe in, standing up for what's right, and fighting against all the wrong that might be being done, no matter what that is. In this case, it's, against Black lives. And my mom at a very, very early age told me, don't put yourself in a box. you're not just a basketball player. You're not going to be just some dumb basketball player. You're going to be educated. You're going to stand up for what's right. You're going to speak out, whether it's somebody in your middle school, elementary school getting bullied. You're going to jump in because you know right from wrong. And for me, that's kind of where it all started and why I am where I am today, and in a position to do what I'm doing and speaking out because of those words from my mother. And I've been able to use the gift of basketball to have a platform, and using this platform that I have to, use my voice, be out here in the community. And this is, I always call it God's work. I feel like I've been put in this position to do it, as an athlete and somebody who's worked my whole life to just to reach the highest levels of basketball. But that's not the box that, I feel like I'm supposed to be in. I want to be in every single box and affect so many lives. And I feel like that's our duty to do that.
Okay, thank you. And so Nolan mentioned his mother's influence on him. And I'd be remiss if we're talking about the social activism that both of these elite individuals, and I'm going to use that. I know they're modest and they don't want me to say that, but their athletic accomplishments, their education, and what they're doing is elite. Specifically, I mean, they're just stepping out of the box. So I have to say that. But Nolan talks about his mom, and I think about the lineage of what these two individuals come from. And so they don't know. I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos, read a lot of articles on both of them. And so I'm going to go back to Sydney, but I want you to, Sydney, if you can talk about how your position playing point guard influenced what you do, and then also your education, and then also your great-grandmother. How did these different aspects of your being influence you? Because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your lineage and what you both come from. And Nolan, I'm gonna give you a heads up. You talked about your mom, but I got to hear about your dad as well, because I know he had a profound impact on your life.
Absolutely.
Man, yeah. So I'm guessing you saw the video about my great grandmother being the first woman voter in our family.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, she grew up in Louisiana and she worked in the home of a white doctor and for several white families in Louisiana. And, back then, it was something profound for, I think, a Black person to have the level of respect that she had in the community, both from Black people and white people. But she was the first one to vote in our family. She was a member of the NAACP. She believed in, showing her kids that you should fight, to right wrongs. If you see that, our people hadn't been able to vote for so long and there's finally an opportunity, obviously you need to take advantage of that. But she only had like a third grade education, but that didn't stop her from just making sure that they were educated, walking them to school and then walking to her jobs to work for these families and hardly make any money and just really struggle for most of her life. But it didn't stop her from fighting. I think that was certainly passed on to, the women in our family, the men in our family. And when we talk about being a point guard, it's just, obviously, like, my parents raised me well and raised me the same way Nolan's saying, like, you speak up when you saw things are not right. Kids being bullied. I can remember back to like kindergarten, there was this kid who was always picking on this overweight kid in our class. And I like threw a chair at him one day. And I'm not saying that was the way to handle it, but I was just so sick of it. Like, I was crying because I was just like, why do you keep messing with him because of his appearance? Anyways, so I've always been the type, when something's not right, like, I'm going to do something. I'm not saying that it's always the right way to handle it, but I'm going to say something. That's just my nature, whether it means I'm not going to have a job in a league or I'm going to be criticized or there will be consequences. That's just my nature. And so being a point guard, obviously we have to lead a team. We have to be an extension of a head coach. You have so many responsibilities out there that it's like, it's very difficult for you to not be a leader. Like, I've never seen very successful point guards who don't speak. I've been around some, and it always frustrates me when point guards aren't vocal. I'm just like, how are you thinking that you can do this? And I see Nolan agreeing, but yeah, it's just like, it's in our nature as point guards to have to do that. But it also helped that I came from a family who taught me to stand up for what I believe is right.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope our players are listening. I know some of them are watching tonight, so wow, they needed to hear that. Hey, look, it's like loving basketball. Point guards lead from the front, not the back.
Right.
Nice, nice. So yeah, Nolan, so how did your father influence you to be the man that you are today and to take these roles specifically in leadership?
Yeah, so my dad, I remember when I was 8 years old, my dad took me to the Million Man March in 1996, where I think it was Louis Farrakhan spoke. And yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday because we took the metro down to DC and it was flooding. I just remember my dad holding my hand. He's like, look, stay close to me. And I was with Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, Rod Strickland. And then in August, my dad passed, so that was something that just stuck with me for my whole life. And then just the memories of my dad that I hear from all those former NBA teammates that he had and just his peers. And they're like, your dad did not take anything from anyone. He had the greatest smile. He was a great human being. But when it came to anything that was wrong, he spoke up. My dad was 6'7", played in the NBA for 9 years, big, intimidating guy, but he had a smile that just lit up a room, so just always trying to follow in his footsteps and doing things the way he did. That's how he impacted my life. And I remember that to this day, that Million Man March back in 96. So I guess that's for me another spot where it kind of started for me.
Nice, nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's deep. That's really deep. So we talked about kind of from where you both come, but now I want to specifically anchor on the work that you're doing. So if you can share some of the work that you're doing with this group, and then also talk about the impact that you want to have on your family, on your community, and the greater United States. So why do you do what you do? So I guess 2 parts. What are you doing right now? Because everybody on the call might not know. And you both have done some phenomenal things. You've won some great awards. You serve on great councils. You're connecting different people and really moving the needle. So share probably maybe your proudest activism moment, and then what is the impact that you want to have? We can start with Nolan this time.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the impact I want to have is actually a quote that I've learned from Coach K, is leave every place greater than the way you found it. And that's kind of where my work started during 2020, 2021, where I wanted to be out here in the community, in the Black communities, and just helping give back, giving them hope, giving them love, working with the Durham police and working on police brutality and having discussions with them, to healthcare in Black communities, and just being out there, making sure everybody is having a sense of love, but then having just a sense of hope that they are cared about. And I think that's a thing that goes missing in our country, that there's so many people that don't feel that, so then you wonder why there's angry people, or there's people that feel like they're not important in this country. It's because they aren't touched. Our communities, our cities, our states, they don't touch everyone, so that's where for me, I come in. It's like, look, if I go to the projects in Durham, those people know who I am. And if I can bring somebody with me, that's gonna just lift them up. One of the best things during this time that I feel like has really been my greatest impact, and the impact I want to continue to have, is a neighbor of mine. His name's Kellen. He's a 15-year-old white kid. And we live in a nice neighborhood now. Thank the Lord. He came across the street and said, hey, how can I help? He's like, I'm a 15-year-old. I know I'm a privileged white kid. I've always had everything. And I see your work on social media. I see the impact that you're having. How can I help? And that right there, literally, I went inside and I told my wife, it literally almost brought a tear to my eye, because I never really thought that the work that I was doing was affecting everyone. I thought it was just affecting the communities that I'm touching. But she said, no, babe, like the work you're doing it's noticeable. Like you're doing great stuff. Like, so that conversation is kind of where I see myself going, especially off the court. But now I think about on the court, obviously I'm a coach, I'm a director of basketball. It's the leadership and being a role model for my players, because I want my players to think in a way that I've been raised, is that you're not just a basketball player, and don't just put yourself in that box. And obviously point guards are going to lead with their voices, but there's players that might not want to lead like that. There's the quiet ones, the power forwards, the centers. They're typically quiet. They shouldn't be, They shouldn't be, right, Sid? They shouldn't be, but sometimes they tend to be.
Yeah.
But with social media, there's a way that you can lead. There's a way that you can use your platform and your voice. And that's what I urge all of my players to do, and just urge people around me to do, is just first spread love. That's really all that I'm doing is spreading love and making sure that everybody feels what we've been saying this year, and not to be in a box, and use your platforms. That's the work that I want to continue to do as I go forward.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I want to reiterate something that you said. You said you want to impact your players. So as I watched the video of you speaking on campus, immediately 2 of your players followed up. So I think you're doing an excellent job in laying that foundation and the groundwork and being a role model so others can see that. So that's excellent. Sydney, we're going to jump to you. What is your greatest social activism moment, and what is the impact you want to leave, and who do you want to impact?
I think the greatest moment probably took place in the bubble this past season. Like a lot of the times, I think the WNBA, like we're a relatively small league compared to a lot of leagues, 12 teams, 12 players per team, max. You know, a lot of different backgrounds, but it's like 75, 80% Black women, but we have gay people, straight people, foreigners, white, Hispanic, Asian. Like we have a diverse group. We have a lot of backgrounds, and I think that a lot of the times that informs the way that we go about speaking out on a lot of issues. And I think a lot of the times, you know, we're the ones who are willing to step out and like do bold things and make bold statements. And this past season in the bubble, being able to speak to Stacey Abrams, and she was on a panel with us. And this was right before the Senate race in Georgia. So I'm sure a lot of people in here know about one of the Atlanta owners who was speaking about what we were doing with our season, dedicating it to Say Her Name, mentioning Black Lives Matter. And so what we did was have a conversation with Raphael Warnock, and we wore Vote Warnock shirts. And I'm not gonna say that it was all us, but I do think that we played a big part in helping to flip that Senate seat, just by bringing attention, by being willing to, like a lot of people, obviously in the NBA before, they had to handle a Clippers owner before for the statements that he made. But I think for us to do it in that way and not even mention her anymore and just wear those shirts and make that statement and show that we were not okay with how you were speaking about us, a league of 80% Black women, I think that it was really powerful. So for me, that moment was really big, but also being able to partner with African American Policy Forum. Kimberly Crenshaw is the one who started the Say Her Name campaign. So it was really powerful and moving to be able to have a lot of women like that who were helping advise our Social Justice Council in the bubble, and who continue to do so now. But moving forward, I think I want to do what Nolan is saying and just touch the people around me, really encourage athletes who are professionals and also athletes in college, because I know I'll be back coaching college, you know, in the future at some point. But it's really pivotal, I think, to help young women when they're growing up, and young men for Nolan, like understand the power of their voice, especially when you are playing a sport where people are watching you, you're on TV, you have the ability to make thoughtful, impactful statements, and approach people with love. And when you can do that, like that's not something that everybody's able to do. A lot of people aren't able in their lifetime to have thousands of people watch them on TV and use that to make a statement that can help other people or help shed light or bring attention to an issue. So for me, just helping young women and my peers understand that we are in a position to impact people in a big way, that's really important for me. And that's what I'll continue to do for the rest of my life.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we have about 10 minutes left. And you both are making it sound easy. Like, you know, we make these decisions, we step up, we talk, we do this.
That's
I don't know if it's as easy as you all make it sound, because heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I've looked at the videos, I've looked at your comments, or I've looked at the videos and I see the comments on the internet. Of course, there are people who support you all, but there are many people who criticize you. There are many people who challenge your views and your position, and they say you're out of touch. But when I look at both of you, you fall in line of a long tradition of athletes who have taken a stance. If we talk about Paul Robeson in the 50s, who's banned from TV, if we talk about Muhammad Ali in the 60s, who they revoke his boxing license, they take away his passport. He can't work in this country, he can't work abroad. He's not allowed to fight in his prime when he's undefeated. He's a gold medalist. If we look on the women's side, you have Althea Gibson, who is the first one to integrate tennis and golf. Not a black man, it's a black woman. Then you have Waimea Tyus in the 1968 Olympics, who's overshadowed by John Carlos and Tommy Smith, who also protested. But all of the individuals that I just named, when they protested, there was a heavy backlash. Most of them lost their jobs. John Carlos' wife committed suicide because the FBI was following him and prosecuting him. He couldn't make money. He couldn't find a job. His wife commits suicide because of the immense pressure. You can look at Muhammad Ali's videos on the internet, and he's talking about how difficult it was to support his wife and children when he wasn't allowed to box. And that was his whole professional life was devoted to that. So my question for you both, whether or not you know all of those individuals, as Black folks, we carry this in our bones. We know that when we step up and take a stance, there are going to be repercussions. You all essentially have made it. NCAA champions, NBA, WNBA, college coaches, highly educated. Why do you take a stance knowing that there can be backlash? And for other athletes or other young Black professionals, and I ask my students this all the time, I say, if you're coming into your own, would you take a stance knowing that you could jeopardize everything you work for and you could lose a job? And you've devoted all this time to get this wonderful Duke education. So my question for you two is, why are you taking a stance knowing we know the history of America? You could lose everything, possibly. And I don't want to jinx you all, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but I'm sure you've thought about this. And I'm sure you have peers who are like, man, I ain't saying nothing. Nah, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to ruffle anybody's feather. My money is good. I'm making money. I'm on this nice trajectory. So it's kind of like, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And what would you say to people who would have those questions for you? Either of you can start on this one. I'm going to leave it up.
Say you want to go?
I'll go. For me, I think, I think back to like different times in this lifetime, like during the civil rights movement. Like, I know not all Black people were protesting, like obviously different things were at stake. It was really life and death back then. But I don't always think that everybody's a hero. But my personal take, and I think in my life I'm afforded this opportunity because I don't have a family, I don't have other people to take care of. And so I can be very outspoken without fear of consequence because it'll just be me. But I do believe that even if I had a family, I would still stand on my morals and my principles and what I believe. And if I lost a job in my mind, or if I lost an opportunity, to me, that would be God telling me that it wasn't for me anyways. Because if I can't speak about something that to me is not like, shouldn't be, like speaking out about not wanting Black people to be killed by police, unjustly, to me, that shouldn't be like an issue that an employer of mine would have a problem with me as a Black person. And if they do, then that's not where I need to be, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that it's just because of who I am and the position that I'm in, I can feel like it's really easy for me to speak out with no problem. And I hope that more Black athletes start to develop that mindset, because let's be honest, we make up a large portion of both the NBA and the WNBA. And so if we're all on the same page and all understanding that we need to make statements and we need to do things that are going to make it better for the people behind us, as long as we don't have people who, if somebody loses a job and somebody else is willing to go take it, like we literally have to be standing together and be on the same page in order for there to be some sort of production and some sort of headway made. So I forgot the rest of your question, to be honest, but
yeah.
Did that answer me?
No, you definitely answered it. You explained why you take the stance that you do. No, it was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. For me, I'll start with my why. My why is my love for my people and all human beings. That's my why. That's why I do what I do. You mentioned having fears and, you know, the scared of the backlash. 100% I have that. You know, I'm doing well. I've reached a high level as a player, but, you know, I had the conversation with my wife on the days that I've been leaving my house to go protest, to lead a conversation. And it's like, you know, I hope this doesn't affect me in 5 to 6 years when I want to be a head coach. You know, I still don't have the job that I want.
That's real.
So I have these fears. And my hope and my belief is that the ADs, those boards at those schools, they see my heart and they know that I just have a love for people. You know, like Cindy just said, if they look back at these videos and they're like, oh, well, he was out here raising his fist during the Black Lives Matter protests, he's dangerous. If anybody knows me, I'm a soft, loving human being and I love everyone. But to have that fear is real. You know, it's real. I want to be a head coach, wherever that is, but like I said, the AD, that person sees me for who I am. Hopefully I get that job. But when I left out of this house going to lead a protest, it was about the people. It was about the people. It was about George Floyd. It was about Breonna Taylor. I've had a gun pointed at me. My mom, she's cried when I told her the stories that it could have been me as a hashtag. So there's no way I couldn't leave the house. I had to leave the house. I had to go out there and march and be amongst my people, amongst my peers. But it's sad that I have to have that fear. You know, in a couple of years when I'm going after a head coaching job, if I don't get it, I'll be okay with that though, because I didn't get the job because I was fighting for what's right. I'll be okay not getting that job. Like Sid just said, then that's not the job for me. I'll get the job that's right for me when that time comes.
That's real. So we have about 1 minute left, and I just want to summarize some of the things that were said and think about a quote, Nolan, that I saw you say. This is not a moment, this is a movement. And I think it's really cool what you both are doing because you're here on a panel organized by college students. And there are a lot of college students on this call. And the majority of social movements in this country were led by youth. College students are younger. And so the fact that you all are doing this work, that you have this strong conviction, and that you're willing to share your stories and willing to be honest and talk about the fears that you have, but also talk about how you move forward amongst those fears and talk about your family legacy, I think is very empowering for this next generation. And it also makes me think the last thing that I'll say is something that Sydney said, how her group is working with Kimberly Crenshaw. They're working with educators. They're engaging all these different entities. Really, what I see you all doing is kind of creating this watershed moment that harkens back to 1968, because often we don't study social movements, and those movements were college students. Those were young people. It was athletes. I mean, Martin Luther King, Harry Belafonte, actors. You have Muhammad Ali, the athletes all coming together. So one thing that I would encourage you both to do is to continue doing this work, continue to bring people together. And I love that you are fearlessly and unapologetically advocating for Black people. Please continue to do that. And thank you for your time today. And thank you for the gentleman that organized this panel. I was so excited to moderate a panel with two athletes who are social activists, what I would say rock stars and leaders. So thank you.
I appreciate you, Martin. Thank you,
Dr. Smith. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Dean Smith, thank you so much. You guys were absolutely phenomenal. And Nolan and Sydney, thank you for sharing your perspectives with us. I had chills for the past 30 minutes. And Sydney, I was a college athlete, not nearly on the level that both of you were, but you are going to make a phenomenal head coach. Your girls are going to want to go to war for you. And I can't wait to see you do play the role that Nolan is in right now. So just thank you for the work that you're doing, giving so much of yourselves emotionally and physically to everything. So thank you guys so much.
Great,
Smith, great job.